All right, so for the rest of you guys, for all you guys, I'm talking to John here. We've been talking during the day today about what's going on with Tesla. So one of the things that he's keyed on to, yay growth, right, is you need to look at the trend. And this morning trend was clearly lower. And the first place that I talked to you folks about getting short when we were talking about this in the room was when it made this move back up again. So, why short when it's moving higher? It's recapturing the volume weighted average price and all that stuff. And the quick answer really is it was coming back into the VWAP, and there's always going to be a test there. So when it's coming back up to that orange line, you should always have the volume weighted average price plotted on your chart just so you can see. That sort of tells you where the bias is on the part of institutional traders for right now. So if it's trading below the VWAP, then you're looking for a retest to take it short. And once it gets above the VWAP, the shorts get a lot riskier. So the other thing this morning was, if you look here, look at that. It's a perfect 382 retracement to where we got short. So our first short in the room today was up here at this retest of the volume weighted average price, and then we stayed short. And I know a couple of you were nervous as heck as it was consolidating above here, and we stayed short. And we were targeting this move back down to 318.32. So that was about $2 and something on the trade. Great, fantastic. And then when it went back up and tested again, this is where you should put on your goggles or your lenses and start looking at things and say, is it really still in a downtrend? So, what John's saying here is, we're trending, it seems like we're trending higher. And when it came down and tested this, and you had this little reverse infield fly bar there, right? And then it comes up and retests this volume weighted average price. That's really 3 or 4 tests of that level that we've had over the course of the last, half hour, 40 minutes or so at that point. So right there is the cue that says you might be looking at a long side that's easier to profit from than the short side. But if we look at, why did I go short again? Because I know that was, like the Winchester mystery of the morning for some of you. I thought that the retests of 2 standard deviations were going to give us some opportunities. And if you look at, what we did when it got up here to this level, I shorted it. And, when I told you we're looking for a shallow target, and the shallow target was just back down to this average down here. So that really worked out well. I mean, it was, it got you short at our first one here was, hang on, the first entry was right here when it touched 321.75, and then again I added shares where I'm saying I'm popping more shares on at 322.21. As it retested, I put on double the amount of shares that I had the first time. So I'm always winding up with about 1,000 shares of Tesla at whatever end point I'm at, unfortunately, because it's climbing against me. So I'm winding up putting on more shares as it gets to each one of these levels. But I'm always looking for, if it hits that upper band, and the band is sort of flat at the time, that, we're going to see a retracement even if those bands widen. So even if we start seeing, this kind of a thing, remember, it's not this kind of a thing when it hits there. When it hits there, it looks more like this, where it's flat. But these are going to reverse because they're dynamic. They're not going to stay, they're not going to stay in the position they're in when you take the trade. Then holy smokes, the band is widening. Am I going to get killed here? But so what I'm doing is I'm just adding to these positions. So this one was the real killer. This one I was really worried on. So, well, worried. I thought for sure I was going to get stopped out. Julie thought I was going to get stopped out. That was one of those, why'd you do that moments. But, it's sometimes you're losing sight of the direction of the market because you've got this bias of, it's got something else going on. So it got into the 2 standard deviation level. And this was moving lower. So if you look at this RSI down here, it's just a nice little way to, keep an eye on what the momentum is. Came down as price was going up. So I thought for sure, all right, this is going to be a place to get short, and it's going to go short in my favor immediately. Well, it didn't. And I wound up shorting a bunch right at this threshold of 323.62. That got me, back short again because I was looking at this little infield fly reversal there. So sometimes you have to look for those setups. You have to look for those around the horn set. If there's 2 you should know for sure, go back to your Income Trading Academy and look at infield fly and double header, because those work intraday with really, really just great accuracy. So at some point during the day, I'm always going to be taking a trade based on that reversal move. So what happened here was I was short 300 from the first touch right there when, price touched this, because I really had kind of low conviction about this, but I was certain that I wanted to go short up here at the pivot line. It never got to the pivot, but I really had a strong feeling that if it went against me, it was going to go, $2 against me. So short from that first level, and then short another 700 up here. That got my average price way, way up into the range. And when it came back down and hit our profit objective, our profit objective was not all the way down here. Profit objective on this trade was just at the blue line there, at the reversion move that got you back down into this level right here. So you're coming back in and you're looking for that average, right? Because when you're at 2 standard deviations out, you got a 95% probability you're going to hit this blue line at some point. The blue line, 321.83. So, we're short the majority of our shares from 323.62, and we're getting out this 321.82 print, and then it goes on without us, and it comes down and it hits this volume weighted average price. So I was talking to John and I said, if you're still short, you didn't take it off here, the next place you target is this orange line, which is the volume weighted average price. So 320.72 was the next target. And if you really got some chutzpah and you're looking for an extension, your next extension level would be 319.87 that you were looking at, and then the very next thing would be the lower envelope at 319.39. But you're very likely to have an inflection at 319.87, and you're very likely to have an inflection if it hits this green band, especially if the band flattens out. But what you need to look at is you're trying to figure out now. This was really John's question. It's an excellent question. Has the trend reversed? Because really, at this point, you kind of need to forget about this. The move lower is not what you're worried about anymore. Now what you're trying to figure out is, what have you done for me lately, Tesla? A couple things to look at. You've broken down through the volume weighted average price. You broke down through the VWAP. You are headed lower on a downtrending volatility band here. The 2SD is starting to move away from you. You're not coming into a flat 2SD like you were here. It didn't get down there quick enough. It's coming through the 319.87 level, and it's coming down, and it's testing a declining 2SD. That means for it to get out into the 95% confidence interval, it keeps getting a little bit lower. And the other thing to look at is, in this RSI is just a cheat for telling you, how much has this guy been, persistent in whatever trend move it's in. So right now, it's just saying you've got strong trend persistency. When it's around 50 here, strong trend persistency. When it gets down to the bottom of the range, into 30, then what you're thinking is it might be oversold, especially if the green line flattens out. If the green line flattens out and you're hitting it and this thing is down here low and it starts ticking up or starts making a little bit of a reversal move, then that tells you it's probably the market's going long. But Tesla today, more than I think any day that I remember recently, has been mirroring what's going on in Nasdaq. So everything's just been moving lockstep with the indices. And if you look at your you look at your charts of the index and you try to figure out, am I correlated today or am I not correlated, then all you have to do is look at that's my chart of the index, and you can see it's doing exactly the same thing. It came down through, it's been trying to reverse higher all day, and now it's gravitating to that second support level and is basing there. What's that tell us? It just says, what's happening right now is market is trying to pick up and get back up into probably the 566.16 support level. But those are all the things you have to look at, and you just have to try to figure out with Tesla or anything else that you're trading, what's my strategy if it's going to. So I'm taking lower shares for sure on my first entry, and then trying to really load up a much bigger position at a higher level when I'm short, because I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking it's got the probability of a move higher is greater right now in my mind than the probability of the move lower, and that's because it's just been right around this VWAP and it's oscillating there. And right now we broke it. We might see the continuation move lower, but for like the easy peasy kind of trades, you're going to want to see something that looks like this and then pulls back up to here and then gives you that ricochet move down into here again. So it's not been a bunch of trades. It's only been 4 trades in Tesla, but they've all started off pretty much as losers. And when the scale in happened, we wound up with a much larger position, and the larger position went back and hit those targets.